We are live with another solo episode. There is an enormous amount to talk about today, and I'm really excited to talk about the news, talk about what's going on, and hopefully try to provide some perspective that could at least give us some potential solutions and to fight the darkness that seems to be consuming everywhere around the world. Thomas Massie just lost his congressional seat in Kentucky to a former Navy SEAL named Ed Gallrain. And this is the latest, it feels like, of battles. This is a loss in the battles between elite establishment and populist grassroots individuals. It's hard to say how popular Thomas Massie is. It's hard to state how many people look fondly on him, at him. You don't have to agree with him with everything, but he's always a gentleman. He has shown his willingness to work across the political aisle with Ro Khanna, congressman from California, which, if that doesn't speak partisan politics, I don't know what does, from both of them. The Republican from Kentucky and the liberal from California working together to hold elites and establishment that feel that they're above the laws of the land from which they reap people's taxes, services, benefits. They don't hold themselves accountable to the same system of justice. Thomas Massie, in one of the most politically polarized environments ever, I'll be doing a podcast shortly, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, with a political commentator and professor, and he wrote this book about unstable majorities and how. And I talked about this. I touched on this with the episode with a gentleman named James Thurber. And we talk a little bit about political radicalization and polarization. And one thing that hopefully I'll be discussing coming up is that a lot of times in the past, ideology was not, I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but ideology didn't have to be left or right. Implementation of ideology was left or right. And then as time went on, the parties started separating into different moral systems and values. Now, that's not good at all, I think. But I think that was probably intentional. I think it's pretty safe to say at this point that this mass experiment of social media, this mass experiment of getting Americans to hate one another, this mass experiment, and we could even see it because you see a battle for people's attention, not just obviously with big media companies trying to fight for your eyeballs. I'm not talking about Meta or Netflix or Google or X or anything like that. I'm talking about the fact that the search for Epstein files and the Google searches and the news stories immediately faded away following the Iran war. I'm talking about the fact that, and I've heard this recently, and I think this is true. The organized protest, it feels like the organized protests that have been going on in the country for the last 10, 15 years, I would say, generally skew more towards social cultural issues that don't nearly impact everyone as much as issues like economics, as much as issues like foreign policy, as much as issues like trying to understand how America, the homeland, versus America, the empire is doing, trying to understand issues about the fact that those in our corporate, political, and banking systems that are the most psychopathic are the ones that are the most rewarded. And that and I think it's becoming clear to everyone. And part of the reason why it's becoming clear to everyone, it's becoming clear that institutions are rotten. It's becoming clear that there's different levels of values in this world, and there are rules for some, and then there are rules for others. And then it's becoming more blatant. The powerful are becoming more blatant. The populace doesn't know what to do, I think. And one of the issues that Thomas Massie is so good on and has been focusing on for so long, which was a completely not sexy issue and completely not attractive issue until people started feeling the consequences of it, is economics and the way that our economy is, the way that our government spends money, what it means when our government spends more money than what we produce, how our currency is being debased and devalued. And all these words 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago sounded boring are now hot talking points. And part of the reason why is because we are finally at the point where the bill for everything that we've been doing is due. And the way that you know that that's happening, and the way that you know that there is this collapse of the populace, that the elite, individuals, corporations are continuing to thrive, is the fact that our president and the fact that our government and the fact, and it doesn't make, I'm not just talking about Trump here because this is bipartisan. This happens with Biden, it happens with Obama, it happened with Bush. It's been going on for a long time where people could say the economy is doing X, Y, and Z well, X, Y, and Z great. And a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? And there are charts and there are numbers, and you can create economic forecasts that all point towards the fact that, hey, I'm showing you on national television, the people, you, the people, are able to look at how well American economy is doing. Everyone that feels that the 40 to 50% of people that have to use buy now, pay later for their food and groceries, don't be silly. The economy is doing great. For the people that can't afford to travel, for the airlines, the budget airlines that are going out of business. I think the number between Spirit and like Frontier and like the ultra cheap, ultra economical airlines are generally like 25 to 35% cheaper than other airlines. Well, guess what? It's not an option right now. Sorry, And by the way, fuel, gas, that's really expensive. I have friends, and it's so interesting because this isn't a sentiment that people talk about, although it's a sentiment that people experience. When you don't want to fill up your gas tank, you don't want to leave your house. When you don't want to leave your house, you're not connecting with people. You're not talking to people. You're not showing your kids new things. You're not going to make new friends. You're not going to pursue things you like. You got to stay home. It's going to be a lockdown. We've had lockdowns, economic lockdowns, social lockdowns, health lockdowns for a long time. It's 2019, 2020. People have not recovered. And while we technically our life is quote unquote back to normal, we're not wearing masks anymore. Life is certainly not back to normal. Our social skills are have just completely fallen apart. Our relationships deteriorate like crazy, whether it is between family members and community or couples or friends. Doesn't matter. People aren't meeting each other. People aren't going out. Whenever you go out, you got your headphones in. You're living in this little bubble. People have college debt, credit card debt, car debt, medical debt, buy now, pay later, which is not part of your credit score yet. People can't afford to buy houses. People can't afford to rent homes. The rental market is crazy because it's really hard to buy a house now. And so if no one's able to afford a house, everyone's looking to rent. When everyone's looking to rent, it's incredibly competitive, gets more expensive. So people are getting locked out. Thomas Massie has been saying for years, we have to stop spending, so much so that he actually created this little gadget thing that he wears around that shows in real time, connected the most accurately of anywhere in the world, apparently, allegedly, this pin that it's a digital pin that shows the national debt in real time. How many trillions of dollars? It's constantly spending and it never stops moving. It's crazy. And he's saying that as a reminder. He's saying that to show everyone that's watching him, hey man, you see the money that you're working to earn, you see the services that you're looking to provide, you can't keep up with how much we're spending. You can't possibly keep up with what we're doing. And I think America is ready to come to terms with the fact that we are now, I think that the rest of the world has seen that we're not a superpower already for a long time. I think Americans are starting to realize it now too. And not only Americans, not only the populace, I think even the leadership is starting to realize this, because when Trump went to China earlier this week and brought the top businessmen with him, there was not an air of the same type of condescending talk, behavior, negotiating tactics that we may express in the Middle East or South America or Africa or Europe, or even Russia. I know we don't like to mess around with Russia, but we talk about Russia rather, the way that we talk about the Iranians, or the way we talk about the Iraqis, or anyone in the Middle East. But when it comes to China, our rhetoric is much more careful. Our leadership's rhetoric is much more careful. And there's a good reason for that. And I actually think that a little bit of modesty and a little bit of humility and a little bit of understanding where our place is right now, to understand how contingent our society is and our empire is on China, and to say, in order to be able to get ourselves out of this pit, potentially, this is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to work with you. We're going to have to collaborate. John Perkins, again, I always talk about him, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, said in the podcast, on the last time that he was on the podcast with me, that we shouldn't look at China as a competitor. We should look at them as as an enemy. We should look at it as a competition. Competition is we drive each other to succeed. An enemy is someone that you are backstabbing. An enemy is someone that you are working on negotiating a peace deal with and then bombing them behind their back. That's what you do to an enemy. We don't do that to China. And that's because I think that we know that if anything happened, we'd lose. We would absolutely lose. So Thomas Massie is out for representing the people. He raised over $5 million from grassroots individuals primarily, and he was unseated by a member of the establishment. I think they only had like 70 donors, and was the most expensive Senate race, congressional race, I think, in American history. And obviously, the reason why it's such an expensive race is because I think that most Americans realize how important Thomas Massie is. And I think Americans wanted to keep him in, and he lost. So he might run for president next, and I kind of hope he does. So even if we work with China, the problem of the populace versus the elite still exists. And I'll tell you why. Number one, robotics are advancing to the point that we now have warehouses that are operating on robots that are working 24 hours a day. So if America walks away from our meeting with China and says, hey, we had a really, really successful and wonderful meeting with China. We are going to collaborate and negotiate, and we're going to work together in the future, and we're going to bring factories to America. That's all great, not if the factories don't create any jobs. That's the big complaint about data centers, actually, is that data centers provide short-term jobs for a couple of months while they get built. If you want to stretch it out, be all bureaucratic, maybe take a year, and then they primarily run on themselves. And these factories that are getting built, and they're going to come to America, that doesn't necessarily mean economic opportunity. Now, we may be able to use them as a tool. We may be able to say, hey, people don't have to work, but we'll export what we're creating, and then we will use those funds. We'll use that money for the people and distribute them to the people, which, maybe. I hope so. Mark Zuckerberg is training AI on Meta's top employees, so the most intelligent people that are getting paid the most money out of any industry almost in the world, the AI researchers at one of the biggest conglomerations that the world's ever seen, well, their leadership, their top performing humans, they're teaching AI everything they know. And so you have robots doing the physical work, you have AI doing the white collar work, you have America saying that we're going to open more factories here, but we don't necessarily know that that's going to translate into anything for the population and for the people. You have Trump on record saying on record about the Iranian war that he's not at all considering the economy and what people are suffering, and whether people are suffering as a result of inflation, as a result of overspending, aside from the troops that are already there. And people can't go out. Because by the time with myself, for example, by the time I pay for my mortgage and I pay for the food for the 5 people that are living in my house, and I pay for my son's tuition for his school, for his playgroup, because I can't keep him at home. I'm working 3 jobs. My wife is working, and we have another kid at home. So by the time I have tuition, my mortgage, and food bills paid, forget about electricity, streaming, as obviously the pricing, which started so cheap. Disney Plus started, I think, like $6.99 a month. And now I think I'm paying almost $40 a month for Disney, HBO, and Hulu, which I know is not necessarily a fair comparison, but it's a lot more expensive than it was. Netflix keeps on getting up. Apple TV keeps getting more expensive. Amazon Prime just downgraded you to ads unless you want to pay for no ads. And it feels like we're losing, the population is losing opportunities to create money, but the cost of living is still going up. And even if you are going to redistribute money, the cost of things will just continue climbing because that money doesn't mean anything. So we have economic slavery. We're losing opportunity for future employment, whether you're talking white collar or blue collar jobs. And people are getting really disenchanted. And then Thomas Massie gets overthrown or overseated or outseated, whatever you want to call it. He loses his seat in Congress. And the one guy that out of 40 to 60 years of Epstein operating within the confines of the West, the one person that ever forced any documentation out about him just got thrown out of his seat. I don't think I can articulate how huge of a deal that is and what that says about our system. And this is why I keep on saying, and I've talked about this a bunch on my solo episodes, but this is why people abandon systems and rebuild new ones. People abandon them because they say, obviously aren't working for me. Why am I pitching in? Why am I donating? Why am I contributing? Why am I sharing And not only am I not getting anything back in return, like I'm happy to pitch in and just be left alone. Like there's a cost, like if there's a cost to be left alone, I'll pay it. That's like the mafia, right? Okay, knock on my door, you want some protection, I'll give you some protection. But that's not happening here. I have to get off the economy. It's freaking me out. Good news, or better news, the good news is that there actually, I think, is plenty of hope. As they say in Hebrew, there is hope. And I really do believe that. The reason why I believe that is because the people that are the populace are starting to work together and starting to notice that the things that are separating them, the things that the core fundamental human issues that I think the elites media establishment have been trying to get us to not notice, like our money, like the fact that AI is coming for everyone's jobs, essentially, but without necessarily providing. First of all, we don't even know how much it's going to cost for AI to actually replace all of us, and for the amount of compute that it would take and the amount of resources that it would take for AI to actually successfully take everyone's, white collar jobs in America and around the world. I don't know. It seems like a little bit of a stretch to me, although it's possible. And so we don't know, and we don't have a game plan for what are we going to do about people. And I think that this is actually causing a very, very cool and potentially wonderful effect. And that is that once people become so disenchanted with establishment and with the narrative and say, hey, I can't trust you and I can't trust what you're telling me and I can't trust the values that you are pushing for me to either pursue and or abandon, right? I will not abandon my family. I will not abandon my mom because or my aunt, uncle because of partisan politics and who someone voted for, and we have no control over whether or not they even got into the White House or not. Like that is not what our concern is going to be. You know what our concern is? Hey, both of us. I went out with my friend last night, and he's probably much more conservative than I am in a lot of things, and a lot more liberal than I am in other ways. And we both sat down. We both got a beer. I got 2 beers. I got 2 Guinnesses. You got 1 beer. I got 2 Guinnesses. I paid for the 2 Guinnesses and a tip and tax $25. $25 for 2 beers in a local Irish pub somewhere in Boca Raton, Florida. There's absolutely no reason in the world. On the way home, I ordered a burger. I was hungry, and it was 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. $30 burger. I bought a burger and 2 beers for $55 last night. Tell me how that is something that is going to be sustainable for people. It's not. And so we're going to find that much more valuable, and it's going to unite us, and that's going to be much more unifying to us than whatever our partisan perspective on religion or God or politics or whatever might be. Way more important, because you know what? At the end of the day, and I've talked about this too, our level of moral stature or decay is very, very often based on how secure financially, economically, socially, mentally that we feel. And when people are in such dire straits, our morals, our values are going to revert, are going to regress. And it's going to lead, like people are saying, to a revolution. It might not be a revolution in the same way that we've always seen throughout history. It might not be the same revolution that you might experience with people up in arms, but it's a different type of revolution. It's a rejection. It's a total rejection of a system. It's a total rejection. And it's turning your back on it, and it's not using the current system that we've been working on. Colleges, screw colleges. Resumes, screw that. The resumes are AI generated. They're being rejected by AI agents or accepted by AI agents. Doesn't make a difference. Resumes out the window. Jobs, guess what? No job security in the future. What is going to drive me to go to school, to get an education, if there's no promise of anything to benefit me? Instead, we start embracing different things. Relationships. Hey, I am struggling with addiction. I'm struggling with depression, anxiety. And I found that hanging out with people 3 or 4 times a week and working out 2 or 3 times a week makes me feel so much better. You could tell me that's snake oil. You could tell me that's garbage. You could tell me that it's not true. I don't care, because because I've tried following your rules for 20 years, for 30 years, for 40 years, and look where it got us. So thank you very much. I appreciate your advice. I understand your concern. I'm going to pursue the quote unquote snake oil because I don't know what else is out there. And I'm going to at least take a hard look at it. And what is happening now is that a lot of things that were previously stigmatized, whether it's talking about mental health, whether it's talking about the relationship between our mental health and our physical health, or vice versa, our physical health and how well our brains are functioning, how well our emotions are, how in tune we are to our emotions. That is all being flipped on its head in a mass way right now, a massive way. And it's exciting. And then I find myself agreeing with Seth Rogen, which is bonkers. But when he's talking about AI and he goes, if you feel the need, if you're writing a script and you feel the need to have an AI write a script for you, you should not be writing scripts. It's garbage. And what we are learning is that output does not equal value. And just creating something for the sake of creating it does not necessarily mean it's anything. That's the term. It's funny. There's a social term now, a colloquial phrase, to use the parlance of our times, called slop. And whether it's AI slop or Barnes & Noble is talking about they're going to start carrying AI-generated novels. You think there aren't enough writers out there that can't figure out how to get their books on your shelves, that you need to start stacking up with AI novels? Spotify is Spotify, I believe I read this, and I have to double check. Call me out if it's not the case. Has been working on trying to remove AI podcasts because they say, what is going on over here? You know how many people are trying to make podcasts, myself included, that are putting time, putting effort, putting work into this. And one of the hardest things about podcasting is getting visibility. And you want to dilute the marketplace even more with something that doesn't, with something that doesn't, we don't even, it's garbage. I mean, it's literally garbage. So I find myself agreeing with Seth Rogen. I don't understand what planet I'm living on right now. And I mean, really, I feel, if nothing else, I feel vindicated for my last couple of years of solo episodes because all the things that I've been saying have been coming to fruition. I don't think, listen, I'm not self-aggrandizing. I'm not looking to be right and reject. I've changed my mind a lot of things. I've been proven wrong about things that I thought that I believed or I thought was right, and it will happen again plenty. But one thing that is not going away, the understanding that people require, that there's certain fundamental requirements that people need. People need relationships. People need embodied relationships. People need the feeling that people are willing to buy into a system to be left alone without feeling like they're being abused. And then the second that they feel that they're being abused, they either, I mean, listen, sometimes you're tired and you're old and you have responsibility and you're drowning in bills. And I mean, this is actually interesting because obviously from a biblical perspective, what Pharaoh, and I've spoken about this before, what Pharaoh did to the Jews in Egypt was he made them work so hard that as the Jewish scholars say, that the Jews didn't even have time to realize that they were being enslaved. That they were so focused on working and they were so focused on being productive and they were so focused on that they didn't even know that they were slaves until someone woke them up one day and they said, and then once they have that second to open their eyes, they'll be like, whoa, what are we doing here? Why do we have robots in factories when we haven't had factory jobs when factory jobs have been leaving the United States for the last 60 years? The second that we start getting factories back, they're going to be replaced with robots. Why did my friend, who I just went to celebrate his graduation from medical school, where he spent probably $250,000 to get his degree, why is his job going to be obsolete in 5 years? And why are we training the world's best AI agents on the world's best doctors to have everyone that's not the world's best doctor just be completely replaced? Why is he playing into that system? Now, he's playing into it because, on the other hand, what else can you do? What are you going to do? You're not going to work? You're not going to learn? You're not going to be creative? So we know we want to do something. We know we want to have it make a difference and have an impact, but it feels like our opportunities to do so are being stripped away from us. And I think that this is what other countries have felt like while the American empire was crushing them financially and economically. I'm sure that this is what South America felt like. By the way, China does this too. It's soft power influence, it's propaganda, it's money. And John Kariakou, who is the only person to go to prison from the CIA that was related to the torture program. And the reason why he went to prison was because he blew the whistle on the torture program. And he was the only one that was punished. John Kariakou says, guys, torture doesn't even work. It doesn't get you to give good information. It doesn't get good intelligence. It doesn't get good information. When people are suffering, they will do what they got to do to get out of suffering. They don't care whether it's good information or bad information. I think that we can apply that train of thought to groups of people at a time as well. When groups of people are suffering, that's not a way to incentivize them. That's not a way to change people's minds. Economic warfare, real warfare, the way to get people to change their minds, the way to get people to go along, the way to get people to succeed is to help everyone succeed. And the best thing is There's enough out there that not everyone has to succeed at the same thing. There's enough to do. There's enough humanity. This world is diverse enough. Life is diverse enough. The universe is diverse enough. Math, physics, psychology, technology, storytelling, education. I mean, taking care of the physical world around us, learning about the oceans, learning about space, learning about, our relationship to time and space, breaking free of the confines of our national slavery, of our addictions, for, of the fight for our attention, of the fight for our money, of the fight for our eyeballs, and the fight for our values. We could focus on making the world better by understanding it. And that's what's cool. A lot of people are rebelling in the sense that they're starting to give credence to a lot of things that were disregarded just a couple of years ago. Whether you want to call it UFOs, alien life, extraterrestrial life, the relationship potentially between religion and this ET phenomenon that people are experiencing, shared consciousness that we could study. All these things are being looked at more seriously now because the other system failed. And it's a scary time. It's super, super scary. We're going through an enormous transition. You could feel it happening. You feel that people are getting squeezed and we're either going to just go down living the exact same way that we always were, or we're really going to change and something radical is going to happen. And I think that when something radical happens, it's going to be a good thing. It's going to be a hopeful thing. I think that the American experiment of this of America, the empire, this imperial perspective has failed. It's crashing. I don't know. I would prefer if America, the homeland, rose like a phoenix from the ashes. I would hope that America, the homeland, can recover from all the damage that it's sustained, from all the financial, from all the social damage, from all the spiritual damage, from all the physical damage, from all the destruction, from the congestion, from the destruction of cities and the population, from the isolation of the American people, to feeling like we're not living in one country. We're living in a world of massive competition that everyone around you is probably harmful. It's probably a threat. And it's exhausting to live like that. And a society that lives like that can't continue. Because we do need to collaborate. People are social animals. The only way we have survived in the past was with working together. We'll do it. The hippies saved physics, according to David Kaiser. The hippies saved physics because this is fascinating, actually. During the World War II era and then the Cold War, and really since then, we've constantly been in a state of war where we need to take our science and our scientists and apply their perspective towards trying to resolve real world and real wartime problems. Gone was the questions of purpose, of universality, of the theory of everything, of play, of wonder, of looking at a UFO and being like, I don't know how to measure that. I don't know what it could possibly mean. Let's try and figure it out, as opposed to, I don't know what that means, but I got more important things to do. And the scientific community was losing its life. And then the hippies came along. And the hippies, which I think I've talked about a bunch on the podcast with Jenny Chan, with Dennis McNally, the hippies got a lot of their culture from the East, from Thailand, from China, from Japan, India, some of the most ancient cultures in the world. And we have all this mysticism. We have meditation. We have out-of-body experiences. We have remote viewing. We have vibrations and music and telepathy. And all these things that were written off because we couldn't explain them, the hippies embraced them. And when you get a scientist, when you get a hippie scientist, and you take a scientist that instead of working for Raytheon or for the Pentagon, trips acid with the Grateful Dead and studies quantum mechanics and tries to understand how we're all how consciousness is tied together and how we can expand or contract our consciousness, which sounds crazy, to be fair, because it's not, but it doesn't sound that crazy. I think people universally accept, for example, the fact that if you're meditating, you might be able to have an out-of-body experience. Well, once you're out of body, like why is the limit just right outside your body as to, where your consciousness could go, right? We have a deviation through meditation between our physical body and our consciousness. And if you get to the point where you could isolate them and then separate them, and you're observing yourself and you can see your physical body with your consciousness, why not look elsewhere? What's to stop you from looking forwards or backwards? And by the way, if the answer is science, and if the answer is we don't know how that works, and if the answer is we can't figure it out, well, doesn't that seem like a really cool and fun thing to work on? Doesn't that seem really exciting? Doesn't that seem like it has a ton of potential for the future of humanity, for the evolution of mankind, for the future, instead of fighting on Twitter about whether Thomas Massie is an anti-Semite or not because he doesn't want to take AIPAC money or because he called out his opponent for getting funded by super PACs. That's what our priorities are. That's what our values are. We're sitting here fighting about the fact that the roast of Kevin Hart was so not PC. And by the way, I didn't find a lot of the jokes funny. I don't find roasts very funny. I don't complain about them. I just don't watch them. But that's going to take more of your attention and more, and you're going to worry about that more than you're going to worry about the fact that you haven't left your house in 2 weeks because it's too expensive to fill up your car with gas. Like, where are our priorities over here? So there is an awakening. There's going to be an awakening. There's going to be forces fighting that awakening, obviously, because someone benefits from all of this isolation. Only a few people in America hold over 50% of the wealth. And again, as John Perkins put it, if 3 people own 60% of the wealth, even 51% of the wealth in the country, they gain 10% year over year profit, and the rest of the economy loses 3% year over year. We have a net positive economy. Do we?